20th, 2021 meeting of the Wilson County Board of Education to order. Members of the board, the floor is open for the approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell.
I move we approve the agenda for the September 20th, 2021 Wilson County Board of Education meeting.
A second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Powell, seconded by both Mrs. Boyette and Mrs. Barnes, that the agenda be approved. Please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Members of the board and for the public, we are being live streamed as well as being broadcast on Spectrum and Greenlight. We have present in the boardroom all board members with the exception of Mrs. Powell, and so we are on the Zoom platform this evening. Mrs. Barnes, Mrs. Boyette, Mr. Boykin, Mr. Breen, Mr. Mercer, and myself are present. Mrs. Powell is participating remotely. Please know that in accordance with action of the board, all participants in the boardroom are to be masked. Mask wearing is required at this point. And at this point, if you do not have a mask, we do have masks available at the rear of the room for you. So we ask that you adhere to that mandate. I'll ask at this point for Mr. Boykin to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance to be followed by a moment of silence.
Everybody please stand up. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the board, we have the need to approve the minutes of the August 16th, 2021 regular board meeting. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I move that we approve the Wilson County Board of Education meeting August 16, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Barnes, seconded by Mrs. Boyette, that the minutes of the August 16, 2021 regular board meeting be approved. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
And myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda is the chairman's report. My report is very short this month. It is to remind you that you're going to have some reading material for late night coming up soon, as our school improvement plans will be available for review next month electronically, and that approval will be needed during the November board meeting. So I just wanted to remind you and prepare you for the exciting reading that we will have for the school improvement plans that will be upcoming. And with that, I turn it over to the superintendent for his report.
Madam Chair, board members, and others, I want to take a moment to recognize some new members of our WCS family. We're excited to welcome 28 student interns into our schools and thankful to be a part of their journey. Student interns are college students who are training for their future careers by shadowing their educators, counselors, psychologists, and therapists. And so we're grateful to the veteran educators who share their time and wisdom and expertise. We also have 33 new first-year teachers in our classrooms who are already having a huge impact on our students. And so we're always excited to see new faces in our school system, especially with us being back in school this year. So if you see anyone like that, stop them and tell them thanks and congratulate them on being a part of things. I also want to take a second to remind families about creating accounts in 2 platforms that we're using this year, Scribs and Parent Portal. That's helping you stay connected to your students' information. In Scribs, families complete information about emergency contacts, reunification, and a media release. And you can update that information at any time through the online platform, and you can also use Scribs to access and upload digital forms like your health assessments and immunization records. In Parent Portal, families can see their students' grades and attendance in real time. That might be a shock to some students, but parents will really love that fact. So they are never surprised by a progress report or report card. So visit the Wilson County Schools website and click on Get Connect Ed to create those accounts and be able to access that. My screen's refreshing. Here we go. Hold on. We also want to remind families of kindergartners, 7th graders, seniors, and students who are new to attending school in North Carolina that by law there are certain immunizations that these students are required to have unless they have an exemption. So these immunizations include Tdap, MMR. They do not include the COVID-19 vaccine. Please make sure your student has the necessary immunizations and that you provide the school with a copy of your student's valid immunization record. Kindergarten students also need a health assessment form completed by a doctor. If the school does not have your student's immunization record or a health assessment within 30 days of enrollment, which for most students is September 24th, which is right around the corner, then state law prohibits the students from being allowed to attend the school beginning that following Monday, so the 27th. So once your students receive their immunizations, that paperwork, then we can get everything squared away and the student will be able to return to school. So those immunizations, those records are very important this time of year, especially for our beginning students. If you don't go through your student's doctor to schedule those, then you can certainly schedule an appointment at our WASH clinics at our schools and call 252-360-0769 or the Wilson County Health Department at 237-3141. So either the WASH clinics or the health department can help you get those immunizations for our students. Let's see, I'm going to go through all my stuff. Two more things that'll involve some work for you board members. One is actual real work you're going to have to do, which is we need to schedule a work session for ORED to come in and begin working on our redistricting and facility planning and optimization. So I don't know what calendars are like. I know they're going to be bad once we start looking at them. So it's mid to late September, so October 11th is a possible date. If you want to look at that real quick, I'd like to go ahead and have time to meet with them, and we need to get started on that process.
If that's one date, what is the option?
That's a Monday before, a week before your board meeting.
It's Columbus Day. I cannot be
Okay.
here on the 11th.
How about if we send some dates out and work with them? Will that
That's
work? Mr.
Yes.
Morrison works with the calendars. I'd like to get a couple dates scheduled at once for them to come in and do that.
Okay,
I've got a meeting with them later this week to review and have some planning. I had some last week. But it's important we go ahead and get started on that. I'd like to do one later this month if possible, but I know that you have schedules and we need to notice everything. So I'm going to go ahead and schedule 2 or 3 spaced out if that's okay with everyone.
all right.
And finally, for a good meeting that you need to schedule, is it's time for us to have a groundbreaking for Watt. So with your permission, I'd like for us to be able to reach out to all of you and the county commissioners and others that have been involved with the Watt project and have had hand in it, and to get a date and time set to have an official groundbreaking for the Watt project on the Lee Technology Center campus at Wilson Community College. So that is right around the corner. I will gladly go get all the shovels and the gold paint myself, take care of that. And we're ready to turn dirt and get going and have the ceremonial piece, but work has already begun. So I think it's important to celebrate that, especially you can see a lot of things that are happening, but it's definitely time to have that official celebration. So be looking at your calendars, and Ms. Horse and I will be contacting you over the rest of the week to schedule some dates, and we'll coordinate that with the
Okay,
other folks involved. Madam Chair, that's all I have.
all right, thank you. Well, that's three dates that we're going to need, 2 dates that we're going to need.
2 for sure, and then probably a couple extra dates for already.
Okay, so, please have schedules available so that at Mrs. Horace's contacting point, we can look at whatever is offered up other than October the 11th and see if we can come to a consensus as a time for these activities. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the opportunity for the public to give input. Each person is granted 3 minutes for his or her presentation. This portion of the meeting is for the board to hear matters of interest from the public. However, obscene or vulgar statements, personal attacks and statements reasonably perceived to be disruptive or imminently threatening to the orderly operation of the meeting shall not be permitted. We have 4 persons who have signed up to speak. The first is Edwards de Leon Garcia regarding resources in Wilson County schools. Is he?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Edward Garcia. I graduated Bennington High School in 2020, and now I'm a third-year college student at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. At UNCG, I'm double majoring in political science with a concentration in pre-law and Spanish education. My time in Wilson County schools allowed me to grow into the adult I was 2 years ago. But there are moments where I think how it wasn't enough. As a first-generation gay Latinx, I wish I had more help. Based on my experiences, the system needs to be assessed and restructured when it comes to providing resources for the Latinx students, their families. Also, I'm here to learn about Wilson County schools, how they take care of the LGBTQ plus students. My time within Wilson County schools, I was a student who was actively involved, but no one knew the reality of what I was experiencing. I was insecure on my identity as a gay Latinx. I had no one to discuss certain issues or topics without having the feeling I was making someone uncomfortable due to the issues or topics. I was making someone else feel uncomfortable. According to the U.S. News and World Report, 8 out of 10 children in the U.S. feels unsafe and unwelcome in their school environment. I was one of those 8 students. I felt discriminated upon due to how I expressed myself. I strongly believe Wilson County schools should provide resources for students who are in the similar situation as I once was. My time as a student at Bedingfield are the times I reflect back to this day and say to myself, I wish I could have spoken up for my education. I deserve more. As a first-generation student, I had to go out of my way to find Elizabeth Herrera, who is here today, to assist me for filing FAFSA, RDS, and even applying to college, simply to feel more comfortable having a deeper conversation with someone who related to me in some aspects so much. I know there are many students who are going through this now, and if Elizabeth could help them all, they would maybe be the next generation of leaders. Ever since I decided to move and further my education in Greensboro, opportunities have opened up for me. I'm a member of several Latino-based organizations. I'm also currently working with the undergraduate admissions of Latinx Affairs at UNCG. Recently, I contacted several teachers to promote an event that took place last Saturday at UNCG, but not even a single Wiltzian signed up. Do you know your FAFSA completion percentages were last year? Don't you want to get them higher? Last, let us help build a bridge that will guide our students to succeed. Lastly, it won't be the last time you will see me, I promise that. Working with nonprofit organizations, admissions, and lawyers, I came to the realization that Wilson County needs people like me. We want to restructure and rebuild communities that has lived in the shadows due to low self-esteem. Well, that ends now. Thank you.
Thank you. Flora Herrera Picasso.
Hello, my name is Flora Herrera Picasso, and I am co-founder of Casa Azul de Wilson. I am here today because I wanted to highlight that Latinx Heritage Month started on September 15th and goes through October 15th. I don't know if you've seen that our Governor Roy Cooper released a statement recently recognizing the contribution of the Latinx community and to the state as a whole. Can Wilson County schools do the same? It would mean so much to the 2,200 or so Latinx students if you acknowledge this nationally recognized time of the year. Actually, recently I sent all of you a letter from our Congressman G.K. Butterfield that supported our work with Casa Azul de Wilson and the cultural wealth our students create in Wilson County schools. So I have a proposition. I know that maybe for this year it is too late, no programming was prepared, but Casa Azul de Wilson can help Wilson County schools brainstorm for next year. Let's create unity through cultural connections. Our culture is a part of us. And when we see that our schools celebrate it, it foments positive ethnic identity in the students, allowing them to be their authentic selves at school. Not only will this fulfill the Latinx students, but it will also inform and diversify the cultural knowledge all students by giving them an opportunity to learn from our Latinx history and heritage. Our identity is crucial to our existence. For so long, my community has been pushed to assimilate, to minimize their uniqueness, and even as far as to be ashamed of their native language in the name of fitting in. This creates so much confusion that carries with us into our adulthood. I'm telling you this from personal experience. I only came into this self-love of my Latinidad later in life, certainly not in high school. And I am here today because I do not wish that on anyone. Casa Azul de Wilson was created because we want to be the resources we wished we had when we were growing up. Being a child of immigrants is so complex on so many layers, but being caught in between two identities is by far the most confusing. It is imperative that you acknowledge the identities of your students, and not just acknowledge, but celebrate them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Our third person is Sandra Gonzalez.
Hello, my name is Dnd Gonzalez, and I'm a single mother and the only financial support for my family. I have to be at work at 8 o'clock. I'm a healthcare worker, and I'm doing my best to keep my son out of the streets by dropping him off at 7:45, either 7:45 or 7:50 every day at school, and that's at Toys Nut. On September the 8th, Miss Amanda Jones, an employee of Toys Nut, told my son to go back inside the car, that he cannot be dropped off at that time. I went inside the school and I spoke to Ms. Sullivan. She stated to have the law enforcement involved if I were to continue to drop off my son at 7:45 or 7:50. I have emailed the Wilson County Schools twice, and I still have not heard from anybody. I deserve an apology, but I also deserve a solution. In that moment, I needed empathy. I needed understanding and solidarity. Instead, I was threatened. I was in tears because it was the most oppressive interaction I have ever encountered. I was being shamed of my needs for being a single mother trying to make ends meet. I want a meaningful apology by giving me a solution for this traumatic experience. It is my understanding that the Wilson County Schools Commission is to provide an educational environment which creates success for all the students through the community working together. How are we working together with families? I would like to know what type of support we as families will get from the school system. I spoke to Ms. Deans about before school care. She stated that the program will not open or stay open for just a couple of students. The program needs to have 15 students or more. So my understanding was that my son does not matter to the school system. My family does not matter. I need before school care so that I can keep my job and keep supporting my family financially.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Our fourth person is Elizabeth Herrera regarding Casa Azul.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you so much for your time. As co-founder of Casa Azul de Wilson, I want to take time tonight to thank Wilson County Schools for making space for continued conversations about our efforts to create equity for our community. Specifically, I want to give thanks to Ms. May, Ms. LaCarter, Ms. Kelly, and Dr. King and Dr. Wilson. Casa Azul was able to help Wilson County Schools in 2 family engagement events these past 2 months. Through this partnership, we have noticed that families are now coming directly to us for help with school-related issues. How beautiful is that? Our community now has a lifeline. They know that they are not alone and that someone has the same cultural background and speaks the same language is here for them. They started to feel brave and comfortable to ask for help when they need it in their native language. As October approaches, I look forward to supporting our high school counselors and college advisors with an extra set of hands and a bilingual professionals so we can work together to give all our students a fair chance at higher education despite barriers they may encounter. In the end, we all have the same goal, which is to help our students and families of Wilson County. I look forward to Wilson County schools continuing to use us as a resource and as a tool to uplift the voices of those who go unheard. I would also like to take this opportunity to formally invite all of you to our culture event on October 30th that will take place in the Wilson Arts Center in downtown Wilson. This event is called El Día de los Muertos, which is to celebrate the Day of the Dead. It's a celebration of a Mexican tradition to celebrate our deceased loved ones. We would love for everyone to come see what Casa Azul de Wilson is trying to bring to our community. There will also be free tacos, and who doesn't like free tacos? All jokes aside, I would like to close with a quote that resonates with me, and I hope you all see the value in it too. It's important for all of us to appreciate where we come from, because without that, we don't know our history. And that quote is by Sonia Santamayor. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you to each of our speakers who have come before us. Members of the board, these are the options that we have: to direct the chairman to respond to the concern on behalf of the board, to direct the administration to respond to the concerns, to refer the matter to a board committee, to refer the matter to the administration, or to place the matter of concern on the agenda for a future meeting. What is your pleasure in regard to the remarks given by the four speakers this evening?
Dr. Fitch,
Yes.
Chair, I would like to see the administration respond to each of those
All right.
speakers, please.
I agree.
All right, and would you please give attention to Ms. Gonzalez and her request that she has made?
Yes, we've had some conversations previous.
Okay, thank you very much. So for the speakers, you will hear from as is our policy, you will hear from the administration at the request of the board in regard to the matters that you have brought before us this evening. We thank you very much for coming and sharing your thoughts and concerns with us. We'll now move into our committee reports, and Administrative Services Committee, Mr. Mercer, if you would please with the report of your committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We met this afternoon, and administration and board members were represented well. And our meeting included 2 information items, 2 action items. The first information item was contracts requiring board notification. And if the administrators would make sure to add whatever may need to be added. The first one discussed this afternoon was Dnd Transit, which is a supplemental Wilson County Schools transportation fleet to meet the needs of students and families served in the Exceptional Children Program and homeless students. And the expense of that was not to exceed $80,000, which is within the amount that can be approved by superintendent but must be reported to the board. Dr. Williams, do you have any specifics you'd like to add to that?
No, sir. That's what we'll be using Dnd Transportation for, is to supplement our fleet to assist us with transportation services for a variety of students.
Any board members or have any questions or comments?
Where is Dnd located, Dr. Williams?
Located in Garner.
Garner.
Yes, ma'am.
So they'll be traveling from Garner's, or do they to pick up our students and have them in place and then?
They'll travel from Garner. They serve several school districts.
Okay.
And that's where they're based out of.
Okay.
And then they dispatch to those areas each day.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And I have a question.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
What were the other counties that also supplemented D&D?
Oh, the last time I checked, Wake County, I believe they're utilized in Wake County. They have been utilized in Johnson County, I believe in Cumberland County as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions or comments?
My comment would be that I'm glad to see that you all are doing this. It's really important, as I read it.
I think it certainly helps in the case, Dr. Williams, correct me if I'm wrong, but with having all the needs we have for transporting students to and from school, this helps us keep from pulling from those people to take care of the exceptional children and homeless students.
Yeah, definitely will assist
Helps
in
us
keeping driving.
keep
Yes, sir.
everything rolling.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, the other contract was Progressive Design Collaborative Limited, which is providing electrical and architectural design to support TV installations in Wilson County schools. And that contract is not to exceed $49,500. Questions or comments?
This is part of an ongoing technology effort provided by ESSA funds. So these are not funds that are coming from our budget, but in order to place the devices within our classrooms. This is an ongoing. We had before us at our last meeting a portion of the number, and this is for the continuation and the completion of that project.
And these TVs, are they the interactive TVs?
Yes, sir.
That's
Smart TV.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Any questions or comments regarding that?
They did say in the committee meeting that this was just the electrical aspect of
Yeah,
it.
because a lot of I found, because I several years back had people say, we have this equipment, but it's not accommodated by the electrical outlets and so forth that we have. So there's a need to be able to accommodate that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any other questions, comments? Okay, let's move to our action items, which,
No, sir.
yes, ma'am.
You still have the COVID update.
Pardon me?
The COVID update.
That's right. I did that today. Well, I thought about two, and it seems like we spoke for two, and that was just the contracts. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Wilson County Schools COVID-19 updates, which will be provided for us, I think. Dr. Williams?
Yes, sir. Just a recap from our committee meeting today in regards to the COVID updates for Wilson County Schools. Just want to touch base and reiterate that our wash locations at Bettyfield High School, Forest Hills Middle School, and Hunt High School still handling our wash diagnostic testing, but they also are taking appointments for well visits and other medical needs as well. But in regards to COVID, they are taking care of our diagnostic testing. Drew attention to our dashboard information. For our Wilson County Schools dashboard, we have on our website, we have a page on our website which is called COVID-19 information. When you visit that page on our website for COVID-19 information, there'll be a link to our dashboard. Dashboard is updated in live time every morning from the cases from the previous day. So we do our cases, and then after our cases, they're updated the very next morning. On our dashboard, there were We have our positive cases and our contacts. Our positive cases right now are 12 students, 12 staff, 123 students. We have, as far as contacts active at this moment, 11 staff contacts that are active and 380 student contacts that are active at this moment. This data is from July 1, which is the fiscal year, the beginning of this fiscal year. So we started with July 1, which is the beginning of the fiscal year. We did have summer school, so we wanted to make sure we accounted for any summer school numbers that we might have had. Next would be our Wilson County Health Department data. There was some data that was shared by Ms. Teresa Ellen with me this morning, which is our current data for the county of Wilson, not just Wilson County Schools, but for the entire county. At this time, the percent of tests that are positive are still 11.4%. This number's plateaued over the last 4 weeks, according to the information that was shared this morning. Average cases per day in Wilson County from September the 9th to September the 15th is 33. So that's the average cases per day right now, 33, over that period of time from September 9th to September 15th. Vaccination information, partially vaccinated numbers for Wilson County. That means that fully vaccinated would have been having both of your vaccination shots. So partially vaccinated are 47% of the population in Wilson are reported by the health department to me as being partially vaccinated, and fully vaccinated would be 43%. So those are two separate numbers. The 47% is just representative of those who have had part of the vaccination. The other number, which is separate from that 47, is 43%, which is the total percentage of the population that have had both vaccination shots and are fully vaccinated. So they're not together. They are two separate percentages.
So actually, less than half of the people have had any vaccinations?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are they in close contact with local physicians, like Vidant, to see the number of vaccinations that they give on a daily basis? I was there, and I had about 5 young people who came in to get vaccinated, and I just wondered if they were part of the health department's numbers.
Yes, ma'am. I think the health department, and Ms. Ellen's not here, I can verify with her, but the process that she's told me is that whenever the vaccinations are completed, they are entered into the vaccination database so that they are recorded, and my understanding would be that would be where they would pull the data from. So wherever that vaccination took place from.
So it's like a state data bank?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we utilize that as well whenever we had our Wilson County Schools staff vaccination and their staff student vaccination clinics. They were inputting that data on site at Pike High School. The COVID information page, the second part that you will find on the COVID-19 information page on the Wilson County Schools website is a link to COVID information for our families, staff, students, community members, anyone that would like to look at our protocols and what we have in place on outside of just the dashboard. Specifically, it goes through face covering requirements, the vaccination information, wash information, self-monitoring and monitoring of students, the cleaning and safety protocols, the COVID-19 protocols and quarantines, and additional resources which would include Health Department contact information, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services website, information for the school system, WASH information. So any resource that we could think of that would be helpful to families and community members in regards to who we are working with in regards to COVID-19 for Wilson County Schools. Just a quick summary of the toolkit. When the board met last, did a summary of the toolkit, which had been updated just a few days prior to that board meeting. The last update for the toolkit was August the 26th of 2021. The toolkit still includes strategies and recommendations for the school districts. And at this time, there have been no changes to the protocols or the procedures that were recommended from the August 26, 2021 as it relates to handling positive cases, quarantine information, masking information, vaccination information. Those changes do happen from time to time inside the toolkit. Each time there is an update of any kind, whether it be one section, a page, a letter, a word. They update that on the front page of the toolkit. So that was the last update, but no changes to our processes or protocols as it relates to the toolkit. And of course, to make note, we follow our health department guidance. So I mean, we work with the health department closely every single day and report our cases and go through the process and procedures that they've outlined for us for identifying contacts, positive cases, quarantines, things of that nature. Face covering information, no changes from the last board meeting. When the board met last and voted to require face coverings for all indoor events as well as inside of Wilson County Schools school buildings and other Wilson County school buildings. There have been no changes. It's still required by passengers on school transportation, buses, activity buses, driver's education vehicles. The face coverings and information for face coverings is found on pages 9 through 10 of the toolkit. So the toolkit does have that. That's also a link on our website as well. So if anyone visits the COVID-19 information page of the website, there'll be a link to the toolkit as well from DHHS. The mask information, since we had talked last, the exemptions and the exemption process, we already have that out. And again, page 9 and 10 of the toolkit covers that, and each school has information in regards to accommodations, mask accommodations. The handling of COVID-19 cases, that information is also found on the COVID-19 information page of the Wilson County Schools website, and it goes through what the protocols and procedures are if someone is identified as COVID positive, if they have been identified as a close contact, meaning that they were closer to 6 feet for more than 15 minutes from someone who was COVID positive, and also for those who are symptomatic. Identifying or displaying any of the symptoms that are located in the toolkit as described by the CDC. So all of that information is also linked on the website for anyone to be able to go and access and take a look at that. Same thing that we follow inside the schools. So we follow that each day inside the schools. Also, we do have the masking requirement as it applies indoors and for all, not just inside for Wilson County schools, the schools and the school buildings, and also athletic events for indoor athletics. That is still in effect at this time, and the masking accommodation, or the masking exemption rather, in terms of quarantining is still in effect and is still in the toolkit as well, and has been put out just as recently as guidance that came just before this board meeting from DHHS as well, that printed off and brought here. But what that guidance is the same as we reported out from the last board meeting, which is if everyone inside of the classroom is properly masked, that the students would not have to quarantine. It really just relates to any time that they're unmasked. That is when that would happen. Also included in your information were any classroom and school closures that have been completed or any that are currently going on as it relates to quarantines and classrooms that have been on remote because of quarantines. Any questions in regards to the COVID updates?
I'd like to just say that, in our committee meeting, we spoke about the amount of contacts that we had. We're at, 380 right now, currently?
Yes, sir.
And one of my questions in our committee meeting was, would that number be significantly higher if we weren't wearing masks?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'd like for you to repeat what you told me, just for the public to hear as well.
Yes, sir. Due to the ability to not have to quarantine if everyone's properly masked in the classroom, that essentially what we do is, if there are times where students are unmasked, then, it's eating predominantly. I mean, that's when that typically takes place inside. That's when the majority of contact tracing is taking place. Of course, we always contact trace inside and verify if everyone's been able to wear a mask or have a mask. But to speak to that question is that because of that, we are able to mitigate that number down pretty significantly. Because if we did not have that in place, as that was the case previously, last school year, whenever we were going through contact tracing, most times it's often difficult to be able to identify, especially in some classroom settings, who was around whom for closer than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, which most oftentimes ended up with the class being quarantined, and that's been able to again be minimized quite a bit. Whereas previously, although we have had some, I mean, because of various reasons, whether it be movement around the classroom or just each individual case is different. So I mean, there's not an overarching reason why some may have or may have not. It has been minimized greatly from what it would have been, because previously that is what we would have had to do is quarantine a class, mask or not. Now being masked, if that's still in place at this time. So because of that, the students don't have to quarantine unless, we've got some opportunities at times unmasked. So those numbers could go from a whole class to 6 to 7 or 8, 4 or 5. I mean, just depending on how much space may be available at the time where they're eating.
So if we were in there and we were not masked, this 380 number could be double or triple what it currently is right now as far as contact tracing.
For the contact tracing purposes, because of the, not necessarily the requirement, but because of the exemption piece of having the mask on, we're able to specifically just identify at times when unmasking takes place. If that were not the case, and that language specifically, which is everyone properly masked in the classroom, if that didn't happen, then we would have to contact trace essentially that room. Depending on, I mean, we work with the health department, of course, to identify specifically what that would look like. But it would certainly go up.
So it's stopping a lot of students from having to go remote.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a comment to add to that, if I may.
Mrs. Powell?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I received the email, and you may have too, from one parent who is also a teacher, and her son is in school where her daughter is in the WAVE program, but her daughter has an autoimmune disorder. So wearing the mask with her son being in the regular school system, if he were to contact her, that would actually possibly go back, be a contact for her daughter. So wearing the mask for her son is also helping her at home with her daughter. So I'm saying that because it is making a difference. We have people that are in situations like that, wearing the mask. I've had many people say they thank us for voting to allow the students in the schools to wear masks and staff, because it is making a difference. And hearing those remarks that Dr. Williams just made, it all just adds to it. So thank you for that. And I'd also like to just thank, well, I've got the space to thank all of our staff. Thank you, Dr. Williams, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Mills. Thank our teachers, teacher assistants, related services, psychologists, our custodial staff, our bus drivers, Mr. Mayor and the technology department, for all that you do, for going above and beyond the call of duty. And it is being noticed, your best efforts that you're doing and that you're keeping our students first. Because this is a job, it takes a whole village, pretty much, to, as we always have heard, to actually teach our students and keep them safe. So thank you, and just keep up the good work. Because we are, as they say, we're getting it done.
Thank you, Ms. Powell.
Thank you, Ms. Powell.
Comment.
Ms. Barnes?
I just wanted to say we owe a huge thank you to the Teresa Ellen at the Health Department, because we are a small town with a big spirit. Because I've had a lot of people comment on or compliment us on our relationship with the health department. They don't have that in a lot of counties. And we do have that with Ms. Ellen, and it should not go unnoticed, so I thank her publicly.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mrs. Barnes. Dr. Williams?
Is that,
That's all I have for COVID updates.
is there any other comments or questions from board members? Hearing none, then now we will go to the action items. And the first one being face coverings. At today's committee meeting, as all of you have been presented with a resolution, and let me ask, let me cover some discussions we had first, and then I'm going to need to ask, do we need to read this into the record, or the board members having copies sufficient?
The board members having copies would be sufficient, but a lot of boards will choose to read the resolution.
Well, when we get to that point, I'll do whatever the board prefers. In today's discussion, it was brought up in conversation by Mr. Breen that we add one whereas, and let me share that with the board members that were not present at the committee meeting. And it was, whereas Wilson County Board of Education voted on August the 16th, 2021 to require masks be worn inside all buildings. That was a whereas that was added. And also it was suggested by Mr. Breen that on the next page, that's the fifth one down or the fifth one up, the middle one otherwise, just be excluded because that information is covered in other portions of this resolution. Because do the board members, and down at the bottom, the last that was added to the end of that at the very end. Let me read that. The board hereby directs superintendent designee to communicate this resolution so as to appropriately notify all students, staff, and visitors of its mandatory provision and to ensure that the mandate be enforced consistent with current CDC guidance, and added, and local board policy. And with those changes, I will ask the board, do you wish for me to read this in its entirety?
No, not for me.
Mr. Mercer, do you want any information on the changes or feedback on the changes?
Well, I was going to ask, well, they can discuss that too. Thank you. But I was going to ask for information on any of that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you repeat the one that we added, the whereas Wilson County Board of Education? I didn't get all of it.
Okay, it's basically, it's whereas Wilson County Board of Education voted on August 16th, 2021 to require masks be worn inside all buildings.
Thank you.
That's added at the end of the whereas, Mr.
That added one more whereas,
Okay.
and of course then we excluded the fifth one and added at the end of the last that, and local board policy. Thank you, Ms. Barletta. Now, anybody have any questions, concerns, or regarding the changes we've made? Or suggest anybody that was not at that committee meeting wish to suggest any other changes?
Mr. Mercer has also asked if you are desirous of having him to read the resolution in its entirety, or if you are satisfied with what you have before you with the paragraph and the statement with the whereas that was added, and with the statement that was added to the final that of the resolution.
What is the pleasure of the board on that?
I'm satisfied with it with the amendments.
I'm satisfied.
Okay. It seems to be a consensus, Mr. Mercer, that the board is satisfied with not having it read, and
Okay,
that the changes that be added to the resolution as presented.
okay. Was,
Dr. Mills, you raising your hand?
Madam Chair, I would ask if legal counsel has any questions before you intervene.
Sure, I don't have any, adding in the August 16th makes sense to me. That's just recording the history of what you've done on face masks. That, I think, sounds like a good addition. I would caution you on the one deletion. One of the things that we've tried to do, instead of having you adopt a policy, which you could, and, you know, the School Board Association had put some out, but instead of having you adopt a policy, I think the advice that Katie was giving or wanting you to follow was that it would be easier for you to adopt a continuing resolution each month instead of going back and going through your policy revision process every time you needed to update that for an update on face masks. So that's why you're looking at resolutions. It's intended to be an efficiency process for the board that maintains the public nature of your decision-making. But also, we wanted to include stuff in there that still allowed the board to enforce its decision to have face masks. That was one of the provisions. I think it would still be fine, because you clearly have adopted a rule for face masks, including for students. And
But
then,
the
Go
thinking,
ahead.
the
Go ahead.
thinking was that, by adding in local board policy, it could be enforced through policies we already have without having to adopt any. And it was kind of felt it might be overstated.
or if you adopt a later policy.
Yeah, I mean, it would include whatever policy we adopted with this resolution, the way we had approached it.
I think it looks, I'm fine with the changes.
Okay. Does that leave you so you can manage it?
Thank you, Dr. Mills.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, on behalf of the Administrative Services Committee, I move the full board approve the resolution as amended regarding face coverings as presented by administration.
Is there a second? It has been moved by Mr. Mercer, seconded, was that Mrs. Powell?
Yes.
Okay, that the board approve the resolution regarding face coverings as presented with the aforementioned clause as stated in the whereas, and I don't have the language, but he has it, and with the insertion, with the deletion of the fifth, that paragraph, a student who intentionally, removal of that, and with the addition of the phraseology of and local board policy with the last that paragraph of the resolution. Is there any further discussion?
I've got one question.
Yes,
Am I correct in saying that we'll be voting on this
every month,
board meeting?
every month, according to
You're required to.
legislative action.
You're required to.
Could we get a clean copy of this, please?
Yes,
With the amendments, I can get you that tomorrow.
yes, okay.
Okay, so,
Mrs. Boyette,
this resolution is in effect our vote. In other words, we will not make a motion to require them again. We will instead approve, we are
I think that's what
voting
you're doing.
whether or not to approve this resolution. Okay. But it's still only for 1 month.
for 1 month,
Well-
it will come back again next month, and the next month, and the next month.
Right.
That's what
Right,
we had
right. Just
originally
one
planned to do. But if I understand it correctly, if the need were to come up before a month and we felt we needed to change it, we could do that.
Sure.
If we were assembled and decided to change it before a month. But we have to do it at least monthly, I think,
Yes.
according to the legislation.
Voting in affirmative of the resolution is
Yes.
voting in favor of masks because you've already passed that vote last month.
Yes.
You're required to have a vote in record each month on masking. So by the continuing resolution and the vote of that, you have to enter it into your record each month.
And that's what I wanted to make
Yep.
clear to everyone,
Yep.
that this
That's right.
is our
That is the
vote,
vote.
this
By
resolution.
voting in affirmative, you're
Yes.
voting for masks based on the board's previous decision.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen? Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Mr. Mercer?
Yes, ma'am. Our next action item was request for qualifications, design, build services for electrical and HVAC infrastructure improvements. And this was to build our, if I understand it, well, I tell you what, better than that, instead of you having to straighten out what I say, Dr. Williams, just go ahead and tell us.
Yes, sir. So this was the RFQ, which was not a quote for price, but just for qualifications. And the bids went out for the RFQ, and then went out again after two qualifications were submitted. And the purpose of this RFQ is for the board to decide if the firm that was recommended during the committee for the qualifications would proceed, and then at that point, they would submit quote, which we would get approval for from the board as well. And it is specifically as far as upgrades for HVAC, infrastructure improvements, air quality and air handlers, things related to our air quality in the building. And the RFQ would be specifically for the board to approve for us to move forward with working with this company, at which point we would get bids, because this is a design bid build RFQ. So this company, the recommendation that was made with Progressive Design Collaborative, they do the majority of their work in the design bid build arena. So that was the recommendation. Were there any additional questions, Ms. Mercer?
No. And this is ESSER 3 funds,
Yes, sir.
and especially the air handling and the quality of air is another move to improve the conditions for our students.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, on behalf of the Administrative Services Committee, I move the full board approve Progressive Design Collaborative to perform design bid build services for electrical and HVAC infrastructure improvements as recommended by administration.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Mercer, seconded by Mr. Boykin, that we approve Progressive Design Collaborative for the request for qualifications of design build services for electrical and or HVAC infrastructure improvements. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously.
That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mercer. Next on the agenda is the Instructional Services Committee report. We had 2 information items and 6 action items. The first of the information items is the 2020-2021 performance data overview. Okay. Just verbal summary would be fine.
Board members, I've given you the handouts from earlier, and I have them set to share with you, Drew, as well. But the accountability highlights, as I mentioned in committee meeting, as are prepared by the state, the 2021 data is for reporting only. Proficiency and participation data are being released for transparency, but there are no school performance grades. state designations or federal designations that are being created from these data, obviously from the impact of the pandemic last year. Any schools receiving designations based on 2018-19 data retain those for 21-22 because that's the last full year prior to the pandemic that we have data. And the cautionary tale is that comparisons to pre-pandemic results are only for diagnostic and information purposes. So our trend was one of exceptional performance increases and great momentum, and as we've seen across the state, that momentum has surely taken a hit from the pandemic, as has been the case across the state. And so comparing pre and post is very difficult at best and should not be done, but it does provide a starting point, as with others across the state, of what we're facing. You'll also note that 2021 was a standard-setting year for the reading EOG, and typically when you see reading EOGs or math EOGs, and they reset those standard and norm years, that you're going to see a drop and you'll see a slight increase. Last time they did that, it was a slower increase over time and never really reached the preset levels before. So it'll be interesting to see what this one's like, but that's going to take some time to judge as well. But in the highlights, and I'll give you the 30-second scoop. Judging from everyone across the state and ourselves included, if you can't see the impact of the pandemic by looking at these proficiency results, then and see the impact of teachers in the classroom with students, then I don't know what data you're looking at, because it is certainly apparent to everyone that this has had a big effect on performance, but also on students and families and teachers, especially in the area of test scores. And that's just one indicator that we know, and there's certainly bigger issues we were facing this past year, and we managed those. But this does show us a starting point of where we have to begin from and start over. And I think the thing is that no one's happy with the momentum we lost, and we were in a great place. We had the highest increase in proficiency over 2 or 3 years until 18-19. And then we have weathered the pandemic, and we're still dealing with it. But this just shows us that we have lots of work to do, and levels back to where we began when we were a low-performing district. So we will need to start over and do the work and make up for lost ground and lost time. And I've told the principals I don't want to go back to normal, because I don't think we were 100% at normal. So we have more work to do. So this is a starting point, and I think it's important. So we have lots of work to do. It's going to take time, and it's going to take the support of everyone to do that. I certainly think our folks have worked extremely hard this past year. Teachers really did all they could. Our students and families did everything they could, and we have many issues facing us. And these indicators are just that, indicators to take a glance at and use for information. They shouldn't be used for anything else other than that. And I'm the first one to tell you that numbers are important, people are important. And in combination, you can do some good things with them. But right now, this is only one piece of the puzzle, and it's not a very strong piece of the puzzle to look at. But it does show us where we need to start from. And we have lots of work to do, and we need to get going. I mean, this is the past. So our proficiency rate fell as most others across the system. It's not a surprise there. If anybody's surprised by that, again, they weren't anywhere near what things we dealt with and managed to work out last year in our schools. There are a few bright spots, if you will, if you want to consider them to be bright spots. Our science wasn't as effective in some areas. Our graduation rate barely squeaked up, which, again, numbers are going the right way, but not anything I'd really write home about. But still, these just reflect the areas where we've got to rebuild and start over, like 114 other school districts across the state. And so I know the work that we've done over the last 4 or 5 years has been important. I know it's worked. I know our folks are capable of doing it, and that's what we're going to do. So this is one piece of the puzzle, and it's a good starting point, but it is it's time to, for me, I have to get over being mad about the lost momentum, and other people have lost things many more precious than that, and we just have to get back to work and do what we're good at, which is teaching and learning.
I was looking at the data and the highlights. It shows a successful scholars program, I think, that we had.
Yeah.
If you look at the before and after.
Yeah, there's
So
some,
kudos to that.
we picked some up the summer program, we picked up some we typically do.
Mhm.
And I think, what will be helpful with that is to see what we can gain over the year and what we'll gain next year. And we've already seen some tweaks we're gonna do for that next year to possibly assess some more and grab some more. I think our instructional folks have been hard at work, planning and looking at things. We've already been out in classrooms. We talked about this early community meeting. You know, we've been out doing rounds already with principals and getting back to work. But it is going to take everyone working together to come back and focus on what we can do instead of what happened. I mean, that's done. And so there are some pieces and parts, again, that are just rebuilding. There's some pieces and parts that, you know, it's not a shock considering what we had to plan with and the direction that we had and the resources we had and what we put together and made work. I mean, it was unheard of. And no one had a roadmap last I checked to help us figure it out. We were all figuring it out together as we went. So I'm proud of our folks for all the things they did and what they figured out from all levels of the school system and our families and our community. I don't want to go back through it anytime soon, and I don't want anyone to have to experience it again. I'd much rather, I told someone I will never complain about weather again in my life. But I know one thing, I'm not going to be satisfied till we get back to where we were and beyond, because we were on a great trajectory, and we were this close. And that this close means students were learning at a faster rate, our teachers were really nailing it, and people were excited, and things felt good. And it really feels good to enjoy coming to work and enjoy doing the hard work. And I want to get back to that. And I think our folks do too, because this has been a very trying process. So that's what we're going to focus on. That's what we're going to do. So I'll be glad to go into detail if you had questions and all, but frankly, I think that's the summary, and that's all we need to do about that right now.
All right. We thank you so much for that update. The second informational item is regarding contract that requires board notification. As already stated in administrative services, we know that $90,000 is the approval rate for the superintendent, anything under $90,000 for the superintendent to approve. So this is being brought to us. We are in the second year of a grant effort in partnership with The Spot, a 21st century grant program, and this is the second year of the program, and $42,067 is the amount of this contract in order to provide transportation, and this is for after-school program services. This grant came about to try to deal with the learning loss that had occurred. And so we are currently involved with this 3 more years. It's a 5-year grant. So this information is just letting you know the cost for the transportation of the students who are participating in that after-school program. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none. Mr. Vice Chair, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you at this point, because now we are going into the action items for instructional services, and I will be making a couple of motions. So
Yes,
I'm going to
ma'am.
turn this over to you at this point.
Thank you.
The first action item is a contract requiring board approval. As soon as I get to my place in my packet, I'll be able to get this. Okay. I'm at the wrong place. This is a contract for the interactive panels that are in need of being installed in an effort to finish the installation of the large screen 86-inch interactive panels for our classrooms, the installation of panels and Chromebox CPUs and cameras. We have done the first portion of this contract with Encore, and this is to complete the remainder of the numbers of panels, 300 to be exact, at a cost of $1,229,747.19. It is the recommendation of the Instructional Services Committee that the board approve this contract. Therefore, Mr. Vice Chair, I move that the contract with Encore in the amount stated be approved.
Second. It's been moved and properly second that the contract with Encore for 386-inch interactive panels for classrooms installation and installation of panels, Chromebox, and camera at $1,229,747.19 be approved as recommended.
Mr. Mercer, might I ask that that be approved pending legal review, because I think there are still contract terms to be worked out.
Okay.
Mr. Vice Chair, I amend the motion to insert pending legal review.
Okay. And do you?
Renew my second based on that amendment.
Pardon me?
Renew my second based on that amendment.
You renew it.
I have a question.
Okay.
Mrs. Barnes?
Dr. Fitch, I was just looking at, I guess this is the second page of this document. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Anyway, it's the page that asks either for the federal ID or social security number. I thought that needed to be removed because I think it has been decided that we would not use social security numbers.
Please tell me where you are, Mrs.
I think it's
Barnes.
page 4. It's under contract requiring board approval. And it's not the first, second. It's about the 4th page over, I think.
Oh, okay. Where it says bidder in the first box,
Uh-huh.
and then the federal tax ID or social security number.
I just question the use of that. So this is not our document, this is their document, correct?
No, this is the document that we put out. This is from Wilson County. It was the invitation to bid, but we're always going to ask for at least, it's usually going to be a tax ID
It's
number
usually
because it's
tax
usually
ID
going to be
number
a
for the
company.
corporation. Yeah.
But just to make sure that everything gets submitted correctly and we have a way to track them and do what we need to do from a business standpoint. I don't work in your business office, but your business office won't pay anybody without a taxpayer ID number.
I was questioning the
Well,
social
you do know
security
our
number.
office.
Well,
I'm kidding.
Well,
just kidding.
sometimes they're an independent person, like not in this circumstance, but there are times when we hire just one person as a contractor, and they may or may not have a tax ID number. They can file under their social security number.
Okay.
But we do protect that. I can answer for things that at least that we know that run through our office. We clean all that. That wouldn't be on any public records.
Okay, is there any?
That was a very good question, Ms. Barnes. Very good question.
Yes. And the motion was amended, and the seconder agreed, renewed his second. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, vote as you're called. Ms. Barnes?
Aye.
Ms. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Ms. Powell?
Aye.
Dr. Fitch?
Aye.
And myself, aye. So it passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda was a revision of our 2021-2022 early college calendar. The legislature has changed the requirement yet again. We had the mandate that we, excuse me, we had the mandate that we include remote learning days in our calendars. we had adopted our calendars to be reflective of the remote learning days. And now the legislature has changed and asked us to remove the remote learning days in our calendars. And it states that public school units may use up to 5 remote days of instruction or 30 remote instruction hours when schools are unable to open due to severe weather conditions, energy shortages, power failures, or other emergency situations, and may use that time toward the required instructional days or hours for the school. So in light of that, we are revising the calendar to make October the 8th, November the 23rd, February the 11th, March the 18th, and April the 8th. The last 3 dates being in 2022, and to make them traditional instructional days in our early colleges. Therefore, Mr. Vice Chair, at the request of the Instructional Services Committee, I move that we revise our early college calendar for 2021-2022 to reflect the removal of those remote learning days as required by statute.
A second.
It's been moved and properly seconded by Ms. Barnes, that we approve the early college revised calendar, which removes the remote learning days and replaces them with instructional days. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, please answer as you're called, or vote as you're called. Ms. Barnes?
Aye.
Ms. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Ms. Powell?
Aye.
Dr. Fitch?
Aye.
And myself, aye. It passes unanimously.
The next is calling for a revision of the 2021-2022 traditional calendar for our schools. Given the same mandates by the legislature, the committee is requesting that the dates of November 2nd, November 24th, January 14th, 2022, February 11th, 2022 be changed. That's only 4 days this time.
Well, one we've already used.
That's correct, okay, thank you. That they revert from being remote learning days to being traditional learning days where the instructional hours will count. It is further recommended by the Instructional Services Committee that the date of Wednesday, November 24th, 2021 become an early release day, as that is the beginning of the Thanksgiving holiday. Therefore, Mr. Vice Chair, I move that the 2021-2022 traditional calendar be revised to be reflective of the removal of the date stated November 2nd, 24th, January 14th, and February 11th no longer be remote learning days, and that the date of November 24th revert to become an early release day.
A second.
Before I state that, was it November the 24th that it's changed
Yes, to become
to
an early release.
early release day, isn't it?
Yes,
Okay, who seconded?
Mrs. Barnes.
It's been moved by Dr. Fitch and properly seconded by Ms. Barnes, that the traditional calendar for 2021-2022 have November the 2nd and November the 24th, 2021 removed, and January the 14th and February the 11th, 2022 be removed and replaced with regular instructional days, and also that November 24th be changed to an early release day. Do I hear any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, please vote when you're called. Ms. Barnes?
Aye.
Ms. Boyette,
Aye.
Mr. Boykin,
Aye.
Mr. Breen,
Aye.
Ms. Powell,
Aye.
Dr. Fitch,
Aye.
and myself, aye. It passes unanimously.
Next is the revision of 3 policies. In policy 3610, these are all, and 4400 and 4600, these are all second reads. In policy 3610, on line 39, it is requested that we insert an or on that last line, meet standards of conduct and or academic performance. And with that one change, the Instructional Services Committee is recommending to the full board the approval of this revised policy. Therefore, Mr. Vice Chair, I
Yes, ma'am.
move that revised policy 3610 be approved as a second read with the insertion of the word or on line 39.
Second.
Ms. Boyette, you second. Thank you. Motion was made by Dr. Fitch and seconded by Ms. Boyette that the full board approve revised policy 3610, counseling program, as amended by on line 39, changing and to and or. Is there any further discussion? Questions? Hearing none, please vote when I call you. Name? Ms. Barnes?
Aye.
Ms. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Ms. Powell?
Aye.
Dr. Fitch?
Aye.
And myself, aye. It passes unanimously.
Thank you. Revised policy 4400, attendance. As a second read, it is the recommendation of the Instructional Services Committee that this revised policy be approved. Therefore, Mr. Vice Chair, I move that revised policy 4400, attendance, be approved by the full board as a second read.
Second.
Was that Ms. Boyette again?
Yes.
Thank you. It's been moved by Dr. Fitch. I'm sorry. It's been moved by Dr. Fitch, second by Ms. Boyette, that the full board approve revised policy 4400, attendance, as a second reading. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, please vote when you call. Ms. Barnes?
Aye.
Ms. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Ms. Powell?
Aye.
Dr. Fitch?
Aye.
And myself, aye. It passes unanimously. Dr. Fitch, I think that completes.
The last
Nope,
policy,
got one
no.
more.
Oh, we got one more.
Student fees.
I'm sorry, I didn't combine these.
That's okay.
I know. It is being recommended by the Instructional Services Committee that we approve for a second read revised policy 4600, student fees. Therefore, Mr. Vice Chair, I move the approval of revised policy 4600 as a second read.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
That was Ms. Boyette.
We get it down.
Save you a step.
It's been moved by Dr. Fitch and seconded by, and properly seconded by Ms. Boyette, that the full board approved revised policy 4600, student fees, as a second reading. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, please vote when you're called. Ms. Barnes?
Aye.
Ms. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Ms. Powell?
Aye.
Dr. Fitch?
Aye.
And myself, aye. It passes unanimously.
And members of the board, for your information, you have in front of you a state of technology, which is information provided by Mr. Mayo, Director of Technology Services, addressing the number of student devices, repair costs, emergency broadband benefits, take-home Chromebook users in terms of numbers, as well as funds filed for by the system to help offset through ESSER funds our technology needs. And that concludes the Instructional Services Committee report, sir. That concludes the report, Mr. Mercer.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Are you going to turn it back over?
Yes, ma'am, it's all yours.
Okay. Thank you. Members of the board, we're now at item 8, discussion action items. And the 3 items that you see in front of you in relation to the North Carolina School Boards Association as well as the National School Boards Association. This is the time of the year that we are always presented with the opportunity to provide nominations for awards, but also to deal with our voting delegates for our upcoming annual conference. We are allowed 4 votes for the delegate assembly, and there are 3 persons who have signed up for the annual conference. Mrs. Powell, Mr. Mercer, and myself. Is it your pleasure that those persons who have signed up for the meeting be the 4 named voting delegates for the annual conference?
That'd be just about
I
fine by
concur.
me.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is going to be a consensus, and we will submit that form for the association. It is also at this time that we get the opportunity to make nominations for awards. In the past, we have submitted names for the Raleigh Dingman Award, the County Commissioners of the Year Award, School Board Member Leadership Award, School Board Leadership Award, and Excellence in Educational Programs Award. These entries must be submitted by the 30th of September, which is right around the corner. What is your pleasure in regard to nominations? I know that we have had the support of our county health department. We have established our wash clinics. They have grown from 1 to 3. And we are also with a dental clinic that is coming online. I would like to see the wash clinics be nominated for Excellence in Educational Program Awards, as it benefits our students, our staff, as well as our community as a whole.
I agree.
I agree too.
So,
Madam Chair?
yes.
We won County Commissioners of the Year
I know.
last year, and
Let's
we
put 'em
won
up
School
anyway.
Board
Yes.
Leadership Award, so let's give someone else a chance.
Well, I was not
Break,
making,
take a break.
I was not making the suggestion for our county commissioners, even though they have been wonderful.
Amber
No.
says she's fine with that. Yes,
Nor the board leadership award, but I do think that our health clinic, our wash clinics, deserve a right to be recognized and at least considered, because it has the potential and is providing excellence awards and excellence in their service, which means that our students are benefiting, and it's well deserved. But it is up to the board to make that decision as to how we do. I did hear of Mr. Breen, a yes, Mr. Mercer, a yes. I heard Mrs. Powell in the background, a yes, I believe. But it is up to the full board. What is your pleasure?
I say yes, Dr. Fitch, and also I thought about our WAT program. I don't know if we want to do one or the other, because Amber's the one that's got to pull it all together. Or maybe we wait until it's up and running, and then we'll...
I think wash is timely right now.
And-
Same for
and-
the Magna on wash.
And
So I
think
agree with WASH.
the timing for it to be a health clinic and what we've been through makes it that much more significant.
And as somebody who has utilized their services recently, they're top notch.
I mean, they're as professional as any doctor's office you go to.
They sure did tickle my brain.
Oh, my
Yeah, I
gosh.
think that's a fantastic.
They got
idea.
microscopes too.
All right, so I am hearing a consensus. The board is choosing to, yes, to submit WASH for consideration. I do believe we have to submit board minutes, so can I have a formal, may I have a formal motion just to be on the safe side?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Breen?
I move that we nominate our WASH Clinic program as the award for excellence in educational programs for the
Second.
North Carolina School Board Association Awards.
All right.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we submit the nomination of WASH for the Excellence in Educational Programming Award for the North Carolina School Boards Association. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
And myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. The other item under that discussion action is the North Carolina School Boards Association Magna Award entry. I'm hearing Dr. Mills say we need to nominate WASH also for the Magna Award at the national level, and there can be one write-up done by Amber that services both entities, if that is your pleasure. What is your pleasure, please?
Madam Chair.
I'm in agreement.
Mr. Breen?
Oh, Vilma, go ahead.
No.
Okay. I move that we nominate our WASH Clinic program as the National School Board, as our National School Boards Association Magna Award entry.
I second.
It has been moved by Mr. Breen, seconded by Mrs. Barnes, that we submit the WASH clinics to the National School Boards Association for consideration of the Magna Award entry. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Mrs. Barnes?
I do not have that motion in front of me, that's it.
You don't have it memorized?
Too busy downloading songs or phone.
I move that the Wilson County Board of Education go into closed session to consider confidential
Y'all be sure.
personnel matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and 6 and 115C-319 through 321, to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143 through 318.11A1 and North Carolina General Statute 115C dash 402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 USC 1232G, to establish or give instructions concerning the Board of Education's negotiating position concerning the potential acquisition and or lease of real property as provided in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A5, and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A3.
Is there? It has been moved by Mrs. Barnes, seconded by Mrs. Powell, that the Wilson County Board of Education go into closed session to consider confidential personnel matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and 6 and 115C-319 through 321, to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and North Carolina General Statutes 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 of the United States Code 1232G, to establish or give instructions concerning the Board of Education's negotiating position concerning a potential acquisition and or lease of real property as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A5, and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A3. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please respond. Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Boykin?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned to closed session.